Once the darling of the progressive elite, Tesla was their climate saviour, the poster child of, well, the future. Now it's become a woke flashpoint. From protests to boycotts, the left has turned on the very brand they once championed. AsraNomani exposes the hypocrisy and the movement behind the meltdown.
I saw the keying and destruction of Teslas. I saw the attacks on the dealerships. And so I was curious. I was curious who was behind the attacks. An organization called Third Act, which has been organizing many of the protests in the area. And within minutes, I started seeing some familiar faces. And these were people who were activists inside the Democratic Party in Fairfax County, Virginia. I also understood other organizations that were involved, including a major one called Indivisible, which has now, I have learned, organized the protests around the country. They had created this nice little jingle at the beginning in February called Tesla Takedown, and that became their hashtag campaign. And so that's a pretty powerful word. As we know, take down. To take down something is to basically dismantle it, to destroy it. And so the target was not the government and the administration, but a business, an actual electric car business that, of course, was founded and created by Elon Musk, who is part of the Trump administration. But it was very curious in my 40 years of reporting in Washington, D.C., that these activists had targeted a private company instead of government officials themselves. So where did this come from? 259 groups have been involved in the approximately 900 protests that I have in this database. And who was involved? It was the organizations from the Democratic National Committee apparatus in New Jersey that participated in those protests. You can see it just goes on and on and on. And what we end up having then is a result in which you end up with a chart that I've created that I'm going to be putting online on my website, AsraNomani.com, and you can start seeing the amount of big money that is involved, the number of Democratic clubs that are involved, 100% of them connected and affiliated with the Democratic National Committee. And they have combined annual revenues of $2.5 billion with a B. That's a lot of money. And that is a lot of resources that has actually also been supported by taxpayers, because these organizations, many of them and most of them, have tax deductible status, which means that they don't have to pay taxes on their operations. What are they creating? They are creating this cacophony in the United States of this protest that people are going to hear reported in the news as, quote, organic or grassroots. But as you can tell from the data, this is not grassroots. This is what we call astroturf, which means fake grass. And unfortunately, we have a failure in the mainstream media coverage of these activities, because what they have unfortunately done in, from CNN to MSNBC is cast this as a grassroots event that doesn't have this top-down effect. And ultimately, what does that fail? That fails the citizenry, that fails truth, that fails transparency. This is the protest industry. That's what I call this. Some people, you could call it the protest industrial complex, because it is a industry. And this industry has the websites, the vendors that are going to create the signs. They've got their graphic artists ready to bang out really pithy messages and really catchy images. And so they're just going to move from headline to headline, and they are going to be engaged in another dynamic that they call rapid response. So rapid response is specifically designed, just like the word suggests, to respond to the news rapidly. And what they do is they then create this echo chamber within this industry of their like-minded individuals and organizations. Why is it that their signs are all the same, their chants are all the same? Because they churn it out. And that's what I've been trying to do with the Pearl Project, is study the propaganda, investigate the organizations, follow the money, and then help educate and inoculate people.